All right, this is Math 2, Unit 8, Worksheet 3, Simplifying Exponential Expressions. Your assignment was to do all of the evens, so let's get started. All right, when multiplying the same base, we add exponents. So 4 plus what equals 12? Well, 4 plus 8 equals 12. Okay, number 4. Again, multiplying the same base, you add their exponents. So what plus 4 equals 1? Well, that would be negative 3. Negative 3 plus 4 equals 1. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. That's not actually the exponent, so let me correct that. Well, let's remember that anything to the 0 power equals 1. So if this whole thing equals 1, we have to have this plus 4 equals to 0. So this is actually negative 4. Excuse me there. I got ahead of myself a little bit. So negative 4 plus 4 is 0, and that would give us a to the 0, which is equal to 1. Okay, moving on to number 6. Again, multiplying the same base, what times plus 8 equals 2? That would be negative 6 plus 8 equals 2. All right, number 8 and 10. Find the value of x. All right, before we can multiply these two things, we need to get them both either in radical form or fractional exponent form. Since it looks like we're looking for an exponent, let's go ahead and put them both in fractional exponents. So I take the 25. I know that the exponent is my numerator and the root is my denominator. So this is 2/3. So 25 to the 2/3 times 25 to the 4/3. Okay, when multiplying the same base, you add exponents. So luckily we have the same denominator, because when you're adding, you keep the denominator and add the numerators. 2 plus 4 is 6, which means we have 25 squared. So x equals 2. All right, number 10. Well, let's convert them both to fractional exponents. So we have 5 to the 4/3 divided by 5 to the 2/6. All right, so remember, when dividing the same base, we subtract. So this becomes 5 to the 4/3 minus 2/6. Okay, well, the problem here is we don't have the same denominator, do we? So we're going to convert this one. We're going to multiply top and bottom by 2, which will give us 8/6 minus 2/6, which will give us 5 to the 8 minus 2 is 6/6, which equals 1. So we have 5 to the first. So x equals 1 in this case. Okay, moving on to number 12. 11 through 28, simplify each expression, write the final answer using only positive integers. All right, with positive integers, we usually have two ways of solving it, either by elimination method or by subtraction method when we're doing division. So let's go ahead and get started with number 12. This is a good one to start with, because you got to remember that negative exponent only goes with the x. So what I like to think, when I think negative exponents, I usually put a division bar, and I say, okay, what's staying on top? Well, clearly the 2 is staying on top, okay? And the x to the negative 3 is on top, and so it goes to the bottom and becomes positive. So really, if you really want to get down to the facts of it, a negative exponent means reciprocal. So if we think of x to the negative 3 as x to the negative 3 over 1, the reciprocal of that would be 1 over x to the third. So that's how this guy ends up over here on the bottom. All right, number 14. All right, I'm going to solve this in two ways. First, I'm going to solve it by getting rid of all the negative exponents and then eliminating. So I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to just work from top to bottom. I know I'm going to end up with a division bar, so I put that in. I'm going to work from left to right, top to bottom. So the 6 stays home. The x to the first stays home. The y to the 1, or negative 1, goes to the bottom and becomes positive. I work my way across this way. Now I start here. The negative 2 stays home. The x to the negative 2 goes to the top and becomes positive. And the y to the first goes to the top and becomes positive. Okay, now that I've eliminated all the negative exponents, now I can start combining and and simplifying. So here I have 2 goes into 2 once and 2 goes into 6 3 times. So that I don't have this lone negative, I like to put it out front or on top. So I'm going to put it out front so we don't lose it, because just because we reduced doesn't mean it goes away. All right, so what do we have on top? We have the 3, and we have x to the first times x to the second, which is x to the third. Now we have this y to the first. We have 1 on top and 1 on bottom, so we can cancel 1 on top, cancel 1 on bottom, and we're done. So actually now, I'll be honest with you, since the answer is negative, there's no denominator really. We don't need the denominator, so I'm going to take that negative and put it up top, and just with the 3x to the third. Okay, now I'd like to solve this using subtraction method, what I think is a little easier, even though we've got some negatives in there. So let's take a look how I would solve this. First of all, I take the 6 divided by negative 2. 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. So I take care of that. Now that guy's on top. Now I have x to the first divided by x to the negative 2. So x to the first minus negative 2. Okay, great. Thank you. What's that?
Don't forget to send out the video.
Yes, I know. I'm not feeling very clever today, but I'll figure something out.
I'm sure you'll come up with something funny.
We'll figure it out.
All right, and don't forget to tag the English department.
English department, yeah. Okay, thanks. Okay, so we've got negative 3x and then x to the first over negative 2. So it's actually 1 minus negative 2. You got to keep track of those negatives. And then we go y to the negative 1 minus y to the negative 1. So it comes out to be y to the negative 1 minus negative 1. When we are dividing the same base, in this case the y's, we take the exponent of the numerator and subtract the exponent of the denominator. So it's negative 1 minus negative 1. You have to keep track of all that. All right, now we'll add the opposite here, and we get negative 3, x to the 1 plus 2, which is 3. And we add the opposite, and we get y to the negative 1 plus 1, which is 0. Y to the 0 is just equal 1, and there's our answer. So I think even though I spent a lot of time explaining this, I think this is the easier way to do it. Okay, number 16. As I mentioned up above here, negative exponent really means reciprocal. So what we can do with this guy is we have a negative exponent. So everything inside the parentheses is flipped, the reciprocal. So this becomes y to the 5th, or excuse me, 2y to the 5th over 3x to the 4th. Okay? And again, this whole thing is now multiplied by positive 3. All right, so remember, when we have exponents on the inside and exponents on the outside, it's almost like distributive property. Everything on the inside gets raised to that. So we have 2 to the first and 3 to the first. So it's 2 to the 1 times 3, which is 2 to the third. Y to the 5 times 3, which is y to the 15th. All over 3 times 1, 3 to the first times 3, which is 3 to the third. And x to the 4th, 4 times 3 is 12, so it's x to the 12th. Now this would be an acceptable answer, but more than likely, when your numbers are smaller and not too hard to multiply out, your answers on a test or quiz are going to be 2 to the third, which is 8. So 8y to the 15th, all over 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27, x to the 12th. Okay, moving on. All right, again, I'm going to do this with a subtraction method. I think it is much easier. So I have that negative 8 on top. So I'm going to bring that negative 8 down. Nothing to reduce it or cancel or divide with. Now I take w to the negative 9. And then I don't even look down here yet. I just go negative 9 minus, and then what's down here? A negative 2. So I put it in parentheses. And I take x to the third. Kind of write that out there. X to the third minus 2. And now simplifying, I get negative 8. W, negative 9. Add the opposite. Negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7. And then x to the 3 minus 2, which is just x to the first. And now getting rid of that negative exponent, it's negative 8x. Don't need the first. Oops, gotta need the 8 though, don't I? Negative 8x. And the w to the negative 7 goes to the bottom and becomes positive. So final answer, negative 8x divided by w to the 7th. Okay, number 20 over here. Well, again, if we do the subtraction method, there's nothing. We have 3/4 here. So I'm going to put my division bar, 3/4, and then n, the 2 minus 3, and then 5 to the 0 is just equal to 1. All right, so 3, 2 minus 3 is n to the negative 1. The 1 times 3 is just 3 over 4. And then finally, 3 over 4 to the n. Negative 1 takes it to the bottom. So final answer is 3 over 4n. Okay, number 22 over here. All right, we're going to raise a power to a power. So we've got this fractional exponent, but that's okay. Let's first multiply it. So 9 to the first, 1 times 3 is 3. We get 9 to the third. T to the 2/3 raised to the 3. Remember, this is a fraction, really. When you're multiplying fractions, you multiply the numerators and you multiply the denominators. So this simply becomes t to the 2 times 3 is 6/3 over 4 to the third, t to the third. Okay, now remember 6 over 3, or 6 divided by 3 is simply 2. So really what we have is 9 to the third t squared over 4 to the third t to the third. All right, now I usually do subtraction method, but we're going to get 2 minus 3 is negative. So let's do this up here. Let's continue on. So probably going to multiply this out. 9 times 9 is 81, and 81 times 9 is 729. Let me just make sure I got that right. 81 times 9, we get 9, and 72, so 729. Yes. Okay, so we have 729. Okay, and now t squared minus 3 all over 4 times 4 times 4, which is 64. Okay, now if we continue, what we get is 729 t to the negative 1 over 64, which means we finally have to take this negative 1 and put it at the bottom, so we finally end up with 729 over 64t. Okay? Now, if we want to go right from here to here, it's much easier. 9 times 9 to the third is 729. We have 2 t's on top. We have 3 t's on the bottom. So think of it this way. If you cancel 2 t's on top, you have to cancel 2 t's on the bottom, which leaves you just 1. So at some point, it's good to be able to use the elimination method. Obviously, gets you here much faster. Okay, moving on to 24. All right, number 24. So first, let's get rid of all these exponents and make it a little simpler. So I'm going to simply distribute that 2. So we have 6 squared, which I'm just going to multiply out to be 36. And then we have x to the 1/3 raised to the second, which is x to the 2/3, times 2x to the 5/3, all over 8 to the 1/3. Now let's take care of that. Well, let's hold off on that, I guess. And x to the 1/3. Okay. Now, remember, 8 to the 1/3. Let's take care of that over here. Okay. 8 to the 1/3 is 8 to the first, third root. Remember, numerator is your exponent, denominator is your root, which means the third root of 8, which is 2, because 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. 1 gets out, 2 gets killed. So if we simplify this, we end up with 36. And now while we're taking care of this, 36 x, oh, I'm sorry, let me get rid of that 36. 36 times 2 is 72, okay? Multiplying the same base, keep the x and add the exponents. 2/3 plus 5/3 is 7/3, okay? So we took care of the numerator. The top 8 to the 1/3 we've already figured out is 2, and we have x to the 1/3. All right, now last step to simplify. 72 divided by 2 is 36. Okay? X to the 7/3 divided by x to the 1/3, we simply subtract exponents, and we end up with 36x. 7 minus 1 is 6/3, and 6 divided by 3 is 2, so our final answer is 36x squared. Okay, a lot of steps, a lot of little adding, subtracting, multiplying, but a really simple problem if you take it one step at a time. Don't get ahead of yourself. All right, number 26. Well, we're going to make this 8 to the 7/3 power over 8 to the 4/6 power. Okay. Now, we can reduce this, so let's make this 8 to the 7/3 over 8 to the 2 goes into both of those, 2/3. And now we can say, dividing the same base, subtract the exponents. So we get 8 to the 7/3 minus 2/3, which is 8 to the 5/3. And we are done. All right, last one. So let's see here. We have 7 to the 5/6 times 7 to the 2/3. All right, when you're multiplying the same base, add the exponents. So 5/6 plus 2/3, which we need to convert. Maybe save a little step here. We're going to multiply this by 2 and get 4. Multiply this by 2 and get 6. Now we have the same denominator. So it's 7 to the 5 plus 4 is 9/6. And of course, we'd want to reduce. So this is 7 to the 3/2. All right, that's worksheet 8.3. Hope that helped out.